Welcome back. I'm Rick Sanchez. Who should and who should not be screened, and how much should they be screened when arriving at airports? Listen to what some Americans are saying in light of this terrorist scare. This is a viewer who called my show earlier today.
Hey, Rick, I think if your name starts or ends with Abdullah, Habib, Ahmed, Ahmadjad, any of those names, you should not be allowed to fly into America. And if so, you should be taken into a private room and do a body search and x-rays so they totally know that you're clean.
Some of you would say that you agree with that gentleman. Others of you would say, no, that's profiling. Joining me from Washington, Cliff May of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, who takes a hard line on this issue. And in Los Angeles, Adina Lekovich of the Muslim Public Affairs Council, who says, hold on a minute before you start prejudging people. My thanks to both of you for being with us. Adina, let me begin with you. What do you think of that gentleman's message you just heard?
Look, I think it's understandable that people are jittery in these times, but we can't allow fear and paranoia to cause us to engage in bad policing, and that's exactly what racial profiling is. It doesn't work, it's unconstitutional, and it's discriminatory. And on top of that, it's got two fatal flaws. The first is that it actually undermines our security because it lulls us into a false sense of confidence that because we've profiled people based on name, that we think we've got our bases covered. Well, Richard Reed, Timothy McVeigh, Jose Padilla, that wouldn't have worked for any of them.
Let me bring Cliff into the conversation.
Hold on. Let me bring up the second point, which is that the second fatal flaw is that it undermines the trust in law enforcement by the very people who we need most, which is those communities that are being profiled or that are potentially being targeted.
Okay, fair enough. Cliff, your shot.
Yeah, nobody who is serious is saying what that caller is saying.
Okay.
Racial profiling, I totally disagree with. What I do think we have to do, it's only practical, is terrorist profiling. In other words, if you look at terrorists, you'll find they have certain characteristics in common, and that should raise alarm bells.
Okay, like what? Okay, like what kind of characteristics? Name some for me.
Well, okay, for one thing, they're going to be young. For another thing, they're mostly going to be male. For another thing, they're going to have spent time in countries where Islamist terrorism is being preached and practiced. Places like Yemen, where Farouk Abdul Muttab had spent from August, I believe it was, till December. That should have been a big sign. Will they be Muslim? Yes, because Al-Qaeda doesn't recruit many Catholics, Lutherans, or Jews for obvious reasons.
Well, you just named religion, you named ethnicity, and you named geography.
And let me add this, and behavior as well. When you take the whole mix, you can find certain things about terrorists and how they act.
Let's be clear in this conversation, because I think that's what we owe to our viewers. You're saying that someone who arrives at an airport and is from a certain country and is from a certain religion should be screened extra based on the fact that...
Well, you've got to add in a few things. For example, in this particular case, you had somebody who bought his ticket with cash. That should have been a sign. Who had no luggage. That should have been a sign. By the way, in this case, his father said he had been radicalized. In other words, you got to put all this into the mix.
Let's go back to the original sign.
Look, we're not. Look, no one is saying we should racially profile, and no one is saying that it should only be about religion. But let me tell you what a friend of mine who's a Muslim who I travel with said. His name happens to be Talabani. He said, with a name like mine, they should ask me a few questions because it doesn't take a Sherlock Holmes.
What do you make, Adina, of what Cliff just said? And you know, he's not saying just go after people ad infinitum, but he said there are certain classifications that we should check, and people should be okay with that. You say what?
Right. The minute that you nail down race, religion, ethnicity, country of origin as factors that lead to profiling is the minute that you spell out exactly what the violent extremists need to avoid in order to plan their next terror attack. First we started with
Hold on. I want to ask you a question. I want to ask you a question very directly. I think people will understand this. If the preponderance of people on a terrorist watch list are from country X, is it not smart to check people from country X a little more carefully?
But there is no preponderance. That's precisely the point. Look at the list of people who have been engaged. Richard Reed from the UK.
You don't think people from the watch on the terrorist watch list tend to be from the countries in the Middle East, for example?
No, that's precisely what the violent extremists want us to buy into.
Look,
the
anybody
reality
who's-
is, if we had paid attention to the parents in this case, and this is the pattern that we've seen in these last 3 cases: the case of the 5 men out of Virginia, the case of the Somalis in Minnesota, and this case, you have parents who are reporting suspicious activities and suspicious thoughts
but we're not
for
talking
their
about
children.
parents.
They're stepping forward,
Well,
and we're ignoring them, and
we
that's
should
a
have
problem.
followed up.
But
Here's
that's
here's
not the
main-
question. Cliff,
Rick,
you get the last word.
Well, here's the main point, Rick. Right now, what we're doing at airports, everybody knows, is we're looking for weapons. And if they're sewn into underwear, it's going to be pretty hard to find them. Looking for weapons is not the way you do this. Looking for terrorists is the way you do this. And so you have to know as much as you can about terrorists. And if you've got a lot of behavioral, background, geographic, and other signs that somebody may need more questioning and more screening, then you give them a little more questioning and screening, and no reasonable person,
Right, so focus
Muslim
on
others, will
behavior,
mind
not
that.
on race or religion.
We'll leave it at that, but there's obviously a lot of gray area here, and that's why I'm glad we had you guys here to take us through this. I really enjoyed the discussion. I think a lot of people did as well. Good points made on both sides. My thanks to you both.
Thank you, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
Great pictures.